La Asamblea escuchará.
The Assembly will hear an address by His Excellency Thomas Motsoahae Thabane, Prime Minister of the Kingdom of Lesotho. May I request protocol to escort His Excellency. May I have great pleasure in welcoming the Prime Minister of the Kingdom of Lesotho and invite him to address the General Assembly.
Your Excellency, President of the 74th session of the General Assembly, Your Excellency, Heads of State and Government, Your Excellency, Secretary General of the UN, distinguished delegates, ladies and gentlemen. At the outset, I wish to extend my sincere congratulations to you, President, on your well-deserved election to the office of President of the 74th session of the United Nations General Assembly. I assure you of my delegation's full support and cooperation during your tenure of office. 70 years ago, when the world was overshadowed by the ominous threat of extinction, perceptive men and women from 50 countries representing all the continents of the world appended their signatures to the UN Charter with a clear determination to save the world from the follies of its then leaders. These visionary individuals envisioned a world of peace, justice, and equitable relations among nations. They dreamed of a world characterized by freedom, socio-economic development, respect for human rights, and international law. Today, we can all attest to the strides the United Nations has made in pursuit of these goals. Indeed, the Secretary General, in his report on the state of the world at the current international juncture, aptly captures progress that the UN has made so far when he says, and I quote, "The organization and its ethos of international cooperation have yielded great and wide-ranging benefits to humankind, lifting millions out of poverty, upholding human rights, and helping to forge peace in troubled lands." Despite these laudable achievements of our beloved organization, challenges still remain in the path towards assuring humanity of a bright, prosperous, dignified, and secure future. The international political landscape has re-emerged marks of espoused hegemonic positions and in polarity. Climate change, the problem of refugees and migration, armed conflict and violence, internal displacement, lack of respect for human rights, terrorism, and many other challenges continue to transcend our borders. It is in this context that we hail the relevance of our theme for this general debate, namely, and I quote, "galvanizing our multilateral efforts for poverty eradication, quality education, climate action, and inclusion," close quote. In a space of 1 week, we have had 4 summits seeking to address the most pertinent issues at the current international juncture, to wit, climate change action, universal health coverage, sustainable development, and financing for development. The experiences that we shared in the summits and the ideas we exchanged should propel us to adopt policies and put in place measures in our respective countries that are responsive to the needs of our people. With regard to sustainable development goals, Lesotho has demonstrated commitment to their implementation by operationalizing the goals through the recent adopted National Strategic Development Plan 2, 2019-2023. The NSDP 2 also emphasizes the necessity to pursue sustainable inclusive growth and creation of decent jobs as the most effective route for poverty reduction. In this context, government has recently launched a job and investment summit aimed at engineering private investment and creating new job opportunities for over 30,000 Basotho, with particular focus on the youth, women, people with disability, and other vulnerable groups. It will also be recalled, Mr. President, that Lesotho was among the 47 countries that underwent the voluntary national review during the high-level political forum on sustainable development. In our VNR submission, we recognized that effective implementation of the 2030 agenda requires implementation of priority programs under different SDGs that have combined impact on unemployment and poverty reduction in all its facets. Secondly, we attach importance to an all-inclusive approach and participation of everyone in the country in the implementation of the 2030 agenda. We also recognize the need for quality education that fully responds to the needs of our country. In this regard, the government of Lesotho is undertaking steps to raise the quality of basic education in recognition with a view to bestowing Basotho with a strong foundation for skills development and improvement in their ability to participate more productively in the economic space. We must nevertheless underscore the fact that achievement of the SDGs will lead us if due assistance to the least developed countries is not rendered. The commitment made in this connection must be fulfilled. We must take concerted measures and in the remaining 10 years to foster stronger partnerships at the national level, regional, and of course at the global level, and ensure that no one is left behind as we marshal our countries towards the 2030 stepping stone. Collaboration with development partners, financial institutions, and the private sector, among others, is critical. With regard to climate change, Lesotho is aware of the seriousness of the vulnerability challenges that she faces due to location, size, and topography. As a result, our government has made a commitment to build resilience to the impacts of climate change by reducing greenhouse gas emissions by 10% through internal resources and by 25% with external resources by 2030. At the same time, we call for international assistance in our adaptation efforts in the area of capacity building and the provision of adequate resources in line with the existing commitments under the United Nations Framework Convention on Climate Change and the Paris Agreement. Moreover, we wish to call on the member states to ratify the Paris Agreement and fulfill their obligations thereunder. In similar vein, we urge all those who are contemplating on withdrawing from the Paris Climate Agreement to refrain from doing so that at this defining moment we do not spoil the benefits of our collective action. It is time for the whole world, developed and or developing, rich or poor, to join hands and take bold climate action to save, in inverted commas, Mother Earth. Indeed, it would be remiss of us if we did not commend the Secretary General for his constant drive towards action beyond words. The inclusion of youth in the global discussion on climate action initiatives is sufficiently and specifically applauded. It is my firm belief that the integration of the youth in climate action initiatives is a step in the right direction in enabling them to be the drivers of climate action, as they constitute a generation that will be greatly affected in the long run. It is in my address to this Assembly in its 73rd session, I underscored the fact that peace and security, as well as socio-economic development, will remain elusive if our respective countries did not implement the necessary reforms of our laws and institutions. Archaic laws and institutions inherited from our colonial masters that are far removed from the realities of the 21st century must be done away with, and done away with now. Our journey towards national reforms in Lesotho is nearing fruition. We'll be concluding the process of national dialogue on the Lesotho we want next month. Parliament will also soon conclude the process of enacting legislation, creating a body that will craft the reforms, and that will be called the National Reforms Authority, and it will be given the necessary authority to be listened to. Without the invaluable support of the Southern African Development Community, SADC, the United Nations Peacebuilding Department, as well as the European Union, the strides that we have made thus far would not have been possible. To them, we are eternally grateful. We are confident that they will continue to undertake this journey with us, even through the implementation phase. The attainment of the goal of establishing transparent, efficient, and accountable institutions free of corruption, as well as just laws responsible to the needs of our people, is within sight. We hope to become a beacon of inspiration to others to also undertake that legal and institutional reforms with a view to finding lasting solutions to their problems. Threats to international peace and security continue to persist, while conflicts continue to erupt in different parts of the world, putting the capacity of the international conflict resolution machinery to a severe test. Lesotho underscores the imperative that coordinated, sustained, and inclusive conflict prevention measures should be given priority. It is in this connection that we reiterate our call for the reform of the Security Council with a view to making the Council representative, transparent, and indeed accountable. True reform of the Security Council will be the one that is modeled on the lines of the common African position as enshrined in the Ezulwini Consensus and Sirte declarations. That is the only way we see that historical injustice will be done to Africa, and the injustices that we suffered will be reversed. Negotiations on this very important subject, therefore, we pray must take place in this current session. As the Secretary remains paralyzed to act in critical situations, the threat of the use of nuclear weapons continues to haunt us. In the Korean Peninsula, the security situation does not give us comfort. Launching of different types of missiles in total disregard of the UN Security Council resolutions puts an unnecessary strain on the relations between states and indeed flies in the face of our Charter obligations. I appeal to all member states to join hands in ensuring safer planet-free weapons and mass destruction and nuclear weapons. However, a sense of hope is emerging, Mr. President. The ratification of the Treaty on the Prohibition of Nuclear Weapons has garnered momentum despite some elements of opposition. We are hopeful that sufficient progress in nuclear disarmament will be made in the near future. In the midst of these developments, we cannot ignore the plight of migrants, refugees, and internally displaced persons as a result of the terrorism and the ongoing conflicts in Africa, the Middle East, and other parts of the world. Many undertake dangerous journeys across oceans in search of havens, and countless of them lose their lives in the process. While we thank individual European countries that have opened their doors to migrants fleeing into their territory, we also wish to call on all European Union to come up with a comprehensive strategy to resolve this crisis with us. At the same time, we must strengthen our counter-terrorism efforts through collective measures in order to put an end to the terrorism scourge that indiscriminately causes great damage to property and results in massive loss of innocent lives. Excellencies, the United Nations was founded by peace-loving nations on the conviction that Nations of the world should be able to cooperate to resolve conflicts peacefully. That abiding conviction of our forebears must be reassetted as we build the United Nations of the future. The United Nations of the 21st century should be one which can give humankind hope for a world of peace and total eradication of poverty. It should be the United Nations that stands with the marginalized and oppressed. It should indeed be the United Nations that takes bold steps in addressing the question of Palestine and protecting the viability of a two-state solution, with Palestine and Israel coexisting side by side in peace and within internationally recognized secure borders. Our United Nations should be an organization that protects the sovereignty of its member states and prevents interference in the affairs of other states. It should be the United Nations that is not indifferent to the plight of the people of Western Sahara, who have yearned for independence for scores of years, but to no avail. Our United Nations should be one that guarantees and protects the Cuban people's right to freedom of trade and navigation, and one that opposes unwarranted sanctions such as in Zimbabwe, sanctions which have resulted in collective punishment of innocent Zimbabweans. I appeal to all of you to rally behind Zimbabwe and call for an end to the sanctions that have for so long mutilated her economy and the livelihood of ordinary Zimbabweans. Mr. President, I conclude my statement, and I wish to underscore that it is not our rhetoric that will, from this podium, that will change the global social, economic, political, and security trajectory, but it is our willingness to put our words into action that will usher the world into the ongoing misery. We are not at the help of our countries by chance, but Almighty God has allowed us to lead the world at this time for a purpose. So let us all remain faithful in true spirit of multilateralism to principles of underpinning the organization, principles which envision and truly represent an effective United Nations that will be a torchbearer. I thank you, sir.
En nombre de la Asamblea.
On behalf of the General Assembly, I would like to thank His Excellency, the Prime Minister of the Kingdom of Lesotho, and I ask protocol to accompany His Excellency.